You know that feeling when you scroll through a sea of gaming PC ads, see a monster-level spec sheet, click Add to Cart, and then get a machine that looks like it belongs in a showroom rather than your desk? I've been there. Those glossy renders can be misleading, and the disappointment hits hard when you try to actually load a game and the frame rates wobble or the noise level feels like a jet engine. That's why I wanted to break down the Skytech Gaming Legacy 4, a pre-built that promises an Intel Ultra 9 processor, an RTX 5080, and a whole lot more. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'll walk through what the box really delivers when you plug it in, where it shines, and where it might leave you reaching for the power button a little sooner than you'd like. First off, the Legacy 4 is aimed squarely at the plug-and-play crowd, people who want a top-tier gaming rig without the hassle of picking out a motherboard, cooling system, and a handful of cables. The headline specs sound insane: a 12-core Intel Core Ultra 9 U9285K, 5.5 GHz turbo, paired with an RTX 5080 that carries 16 GB of GDDR7 memory, plus 64 GB of DDR5 RAM. On paper, that's enough horsepower to crush 4K titles at ultra settings, and the 2 TB Gen 4 NVMe SSD should keep load times in the sub-second range. The 1000W gold-rated PSU gives you headroom for overclocking, and the 420mm AIO liquid cooler is supposed to keep the CPU temps down even under marathon sessions. For someone who wants to drop into Cyberpunk 2077 at max settings, or stream Elden Ring while rendering a 4K video in the background, those numbers are tantalizing. Now, let's get into the real-world experience. I set up the Legacy 4 in a typical mid-size bedroom desk with a 27-inch 144Hz monitor, a mechanical keyboard, and a decent pair of headphones. Out of the box, the system boots into Windows 11 in under 10 seconds thanks to that fast NVMe drive, and the Wi-Fi 7 module locks onto my router with zero hiccups. The first thing I noticed was the quietness of the AIO. Even when the CPU hit 4.8 GHz during a stress test, the pump and fans stayed under 30 dBA, which is a pleasant surprise for a machine that packs a 1000-watt power supply. That quiet operation carried over into gaming nights. Call of Duty Warzone ran at a solid 144 frames per second on ultra settings, and the fans only kicked up a low hum when the graphics card was pushing close to its boost clock. One of the practical strengths of this rig is the storage configuration. The 2 TB Gen 4 SSD gave me more than enough room for my game library, and the sequential read speeds felt noticeably quicker than a typical SATA drive. I loaded Starfield and got into the opening world in under 3 seconds, and loading between large maps in Battlefield 2042 was almost seamless. The extra RAM of 64 GB isn't something most gamers need day-to-day, but it became handy when I opened Photoshop and DaVinci Resolve at the same time as the game. No stutter, no swapping to disk. If you're the type who mixes content creation with gaming, that headroom is a genuine advantage. On the flip side, there are a few trade-offs you need to be aware of. The RTX 5080 is a beast, but it also draws a lot of power, and even with a 1 kilowatt PSU, I saw the system's total draw hover around 650W during peak loads. That means you'll want a solid surge protector or a UPS if you live in an area with unstable power. The case itself, while sleek, is a bit on the tighter side for airflow. The front panel has a solid mesh, but because the AIO radiator sits at the front, the intake air is partially recirculated, which can cause the GPU temps to climb a couple of degrees higher than you'd see in an open tower setup. In practice, the GPU still stayed under 78°C during extended 4K sessions, but it's something to keep in mind if you plan to push the card to its limits with ray tracing on all the settings. Another practical consideration is upgradability. The Z890 board is a high-end platform, but the case limits you to a single 2.5-inch drive bay and only 2 M.2 slots, one of which is already occupied by the 2 TB SSD. If you ever want to add more storage, you'll be looking at a secondary external enclosure or swapping out the existing SSD. The RAM runs at 6000 MHz, which is great now, but if you ever wanted to move to a different memory kit, The tight spacing of the DIMM slots can make installation a bit fiddly, especially with those tall heat spreaders some kits have. Who should buy the Skytech Legacy for? If you're a gamer who wants a top-tier experience out of the gate, don't want to spend weeks researching each component, and value a relatively silent machine for long streaming sessions, this is a solid match. It also makes sense for creators who need the extra RAM and storage bandwidth for editing footage while a game runs in the background. The fact that it ships with